And I would like to ask you to take a seat at the HOPE XXL table to discuss with our HOPE XXL students. Jordi Zweep, Luc van Leeuwen, Ganna van Leijzen, Inica Gabrowska and Maria Janti. Because and they are in the audience because we've got students from 25 different European countries.
Fantastic. Hello. Good to see you. Good. Hello.
And we're going to speak about, of course, your book, but also about the United Nations,
Hello.
about HOPE XXL,
Good.
and your experiences in war and peace. And first of all, a warm welcome at this big table.
Yes,
it's a very big table, and it already traveled a lot to discuss with important persons, but also today with very important persons. First of all, when I read your book, I saw you mentioned the Swahili proverb, and I'm sure I will not pronounce this correctly. Huwezi bent upepo, hifyo bent meli. And for the people in the audience, because you know what it means, you cannot turn the wind, so turn the sail. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
No, first of all, let me welcome the other very important persons here on the stage and to say how happy I am to be sharing the stage with you. I think the meaning of that proverb, which basically is, and I think there are lots of sailors in this room, that you cannot turn the wind, so turn the sail. And in fact, it's also a proverb I've used in the Middle East as I was trying to deal with the Syrian crisis, telling some of the leaders in the region that the strong transformational winds which are blowing in the region cannot be stopped, cannot be contained for long, and they have to embrace change and reform. Because when you are a sailor, you can understand when the strong winds are coming, you cannot just turn the wind or stop the wind. You have to use the wind and use the sail to exploit the wind, but you have to bend. You have to be realistic and realize that if you're going to survive and get on with it, your efforts must be how you handle the sail and direction, not pretend that you're going to stop the wind. It's a futile effort.
Yeah. Do you see the same spirit among young people worldwide as we see with the HOPE XXL students today?
I think there are, with young people, you have several issues. First of all, I encourage young people to dream. Even at my age, I love dreaming. I love dreaming. What I would obviously caution or advise, we need to know, if those of us who love to dream, you must know when you are awake and when you are asleep, because we have two kinds of dreams. But you have to dream and begin to give your dreams a foundation. It all begins with a dream. Without a dream, you are not going to go anywhere. You are not going to take on big challenges and big efforts. Mm-hmm. But there's also a need to be realistic. But even if you are not realistic at the beginning, you will learn. You'll run into brick walls, you'll make mistakes, you will adapt, you will develop your own sense of what is possible and what is realistic. Mm-hmm. And so if you are young enough and you know that you should focus on the sail and not be a Don Quixote and try and stop the wind, you're okay. Mm-hmm. But even if you don't know at the beginning, you will learn over time. Yeah. So keep dreaming, make your mistakes, and pick yourselves up and continue.
Yeah. I think there are also some questions here at the table, and I will come to you because there's also a possibility to ask a question for the people in the audience. But is there someone with a question? Because maybe Jordi?
Yep.
But what do you want to ask to Mr. Annan?
Well, you already mentioned that you've been trying to negotiate the Syrian conflict. And as HOPE XXL in our list of 100 articles, we have the idea for a continental peace president, and that should be someone who negotiates, who's the main negotiator when there's a conflict in his continent. And I would like to know how you feel about this proposal.
No, I think the whole concept of negotiations implies discussions. Let's discuss the issue. Let's resolve it peacefully. Let's not resort to violent or other means. And so apart from beginning with the moment people agree to negotiate, it means they are prepared to talk and find a solution out of it. Where things become difficult is when people refuse to talk, refuse to sit, and believe that their position is the only solution and that there is no other way. There's never only one way to solve a problem. We are creative and imaginative species, and we should be able, when confronted with issues, to discuss honestly, reason simply and sincerely, and understand that both sides have needs and find a way. And a good negotiator can be very helpful, but the good negotiator alone cannot do it. It requires openness from both sides and the parties involved in the conflict. So the idea of mediator is good, but I appeal to all of you as European citizens to be able to be open to talking, finding a solution, and accepting the fact that you are all in the same boat. I mean, the European project has been an exciting project. Yes, there are difficulties at the moment, which is normal. But when I travel around the world, many regions are envious of what you've achieved in Europe. Some people alive today are old enough to remember what happened in World War II. They could not believe that Europe has been transformed in the way it has today. Today, I personally do not believe that war in Europe is thinkable, and that is a great achievement. And that's something you hold on to, and if there are problems, resolve it through discussions and peacefully.
Yeah. And in your book, you describe the importance of a moral forum. For example, when the member states were talking about the Millennium Declaration in 2000, which formed the basis for the Millennium Development Goals, and you've mentioned them. What can young people do to lobby or to pressure on governments which are members of the UN to reach the Millennium Development Goals? Is there something, do you have a special advice for all these young people?
I think it is important for us to understand that in today's world, one cannot be secure at the expense of others. One cannot be prosperous at the expense of the other. We cannot have immense wealth and extreme poverty living side by side without some consequences. And I think we should also understand that some of the conflicts we see, which sometimes become hot conflicts with people fighting and killing each other, sometimes have economic basis. It's fight over limited resources. And whatever we can do to ensure that our fellow human beings have a decent life or have the basic minimum to be able to go on is helpful. We should be able to encourage our governments to continue development assistance, which should be used to develop capacity in those countries so that eventually they become self-sufficient. No country can live on handouts indefinitely, and in fact, most of them will prefer to earn their own way, and one can help them to stand on their own. And I think the young people can lobby their parliamentarians and remind them that promises have been made to some of these countries through the G8, G20, and Aguila, and that these promises should be kept. It's only promises which are met are the promises which matter. I know there are economic difficulties, there are financial difficulties, and there are pressure on politicians that when we have problems at home, why do you want to spend money on other countries outside the country? But that is self-defeating, because in fact, in sometimes helping the poor in some of these countries, you are also expanding opportunities for everybody. Who would have thought that in the current crisis, the bright spots will be countries that decades ago, Europe used to give aid to, assistance to, is the emerging economies and their high growth that has helped the global growth and helped all of us. If we didn't have those countries to trade with, the situation we are facing here would have been much, much worse. And so we should encourage the politicians to maintain their efforts at helping the other countries, and that in the end it will be in their own self-interest, our own self-interest, and everybody would win.
Margie, you've also got a question, and you can find me in the audience in a few minutes. So please go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Education is a core value of human development, and as such is also embodied in the Lemurs List. So in light of also the education opportunities that you had, what would you say are the most important issues that should be dealt with by the world and also HOPE XXL in the next 10 years?
I think education is very important for every society. Education and health. And governments need to focus on bringing up educated, healthy population, not only for the development of their own economies and societies, but in a world that is so interdependent that we are reaching out to each other for them to be able to communicate, to tap into that knowledge out there so that they are not left behind. So I will put education and health very high on the agenda, and I would also encourage communication and understanding, communication of other cultures, understanding of other people, and I think that is happening. Young people are traveling more and more. They are more open than people of my generation, and I see them everywhere, and they ask curious and inquisitive questions that at their age I probably didn't even think of asking. And I think that outreach, that you have all sorts of things, networking, linking up, being wired together is extremely important for the future.
I'm in the center of the audience, and you've got a question for Mr. Annan.
Yes, I have. We were talking about the Millennium Development Goals, but these are ending in 2015, and I'm wondering how can we push forward the agenda for post-Millennium Development Agenda?
After 2015.
Because the battle is starting now, or is already going on?
It is going on. There's lots of discussion going on. The Secretary General has set up a high task level group looking at what happens with the Millennium Development Goals beyond 2015. And lots of groups are discussing this issue around the world. My own view is that whilst they are looking at that, we have to accept that the objective of the goals are so basic. I mean, things like clean drinking water, primary education for everybody, to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS and begin to roll it back, that if by 2015 they haven't been attained, the effort to attain these basic needs must continue. If some governments have achieved it, let's say a government has achieved universal primary education, and they want to look at secondary education to encourage students and give them a free secondary education, and they have the capacity, they should consider it. I'm not prejudging what the Secretary General's high-level group or the conference in 2015 will come up with, but I think whatever they decide and whichever direction they decide to go, we must understand that these goals are so basic that they should not be dropped, but perhaps be subsumed under whatever new mechanism they come up with.
I've got a question here, and you've got a long story, I see.
Yes. Namaste. My name is Koen Vredebrecht. I'm very much interested in the economics of happiness, and that's my question.
Okay.
In June 2011, the UN took on a resolution, the so-called happiness resolution, to develop a new measure for progress, an alternative to the gross national product that encompasses both happiness and sustainability. What are your thoughts on this new measure for progress, the so-called gross national happiness, and what progress has been made and is foreseeable in the near future?
We also spoke about happiness before the break. What is your answer?
Let me say that I have not been too closely associated with the work at the UN, the 2011 UN resolution. But I think you're looking for other measures to determine the well-being of people and progress in countries is something that one should look at. For example, Bhutan uses happiness to assess its own national stature. I don't know how the indices are going to be worked out with the definition of happiness by the UN, and how the comparative measures across national lines will be used. But I think to have another other indications to determine well-being of people rather than just raw economic statistics and data, I think is an interesting idea.
Okay. Ghana or someone at the table with a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I was wondering, you already talked about like we the youth are traveling a lot and we're connected to all of the world, but I still think one of the major problems in the current world society is a lack of true solidarity between me and, for example, a random citizen in Asia or something. And that also influences the development cooperation. And I was wondering if you see this problem as well, and if you do know a solution for it.
Yeah. In fact, when you look at the Millennium Development Goals, this problem was identified as Millennium Goal 8, where we talk of partnerships and support for this very reason of solidarity with others. And I think by traveling and getting to know people and linking up, you're already developing that sensitivity at a very high age. You have no idea how many young people I come across the world. They say, oh, I've been to Ghana, I spent 2 weeks in Ghana, I was here in Africa, I've been here and there. And their outlook is quite different from those who have not been anywhere. But I think the question of solidarity also begins with the acceptance of the fact that we are in the same boat. Not everybody understands it. Perhaps it would be best if I were to use the image of a cruise. Let's say we are all in a cruise, and you have the best suite in the cruise, and I'm in a cabin in the dungeon somewhere. If there is a hole at the other end of the boat, even if I'm here, we are all at risk, regardless of how comfortable we are on the cruise. And in a way, this is a situation we all face. And being sensitive to the problems of the other and expressing solidarity is important, and is going to become even more important when we begin to tackle seriously the issue of climate change, where you who are going to inherit this earth have a particular vested interest. I think my generation in a way has let you down by not managing the resources of the earth as effectively as we should have, and hand over to you a planet that will be good for you and for your children. But you have the opportunity of making a difference. You as individuals and people have power, but we often don't understand it. And let me leave a thought with you. On issues of importance to you, whether it's climate change or another issue, through your activism organization, you can push that item higher up the political agenda and force the leaders to focus on it and pay attention. But I would even go one further, that when leaders fail to lead, the people can make them follow. Thank you.
Yeah, together we can make a change. You've also want to ask a question.
Yes. Mr. Annan, as HOPE XXL is strongly linked to the United Nations and the future in itself, where do you see the UN in the future, especially with many people calling for reforms, for example, of the Security Council, of the Economic and Social Council? What, in your opinion, needs to be done in order to make the UN more efficient or actually live up to what we all hope for it to be in the future?
Interesting.
Yeah, first of all, let me say that the UN is us. I should be careful. I once, years ago, went to speak at Columbia University, and the professor asked me what would be the topic. And I sent him a short message saying my topic would be "The UN is Us." When the lecture started, he turned to the students, he said, "My good friend Kofi has given me an intriguing topic he wants to talk about. The UN is us. The UN is US." And I said, "No. Us, you and me." And that is where the strength comes from. I think there is need for reform, particularly in the Security Council. The structure of the Council today reflects the geopolitical realities of 1945. The world has changed, and the UN has to change, the UN has to adapt. And I think we need, I myself proposed reforms to the UN. I'm not going to dwell on that, but what I felt was we needed to create additional permanent seats without making the council too big. We are 194 now. If you had a council of 20, 25, it wouldn't be too large, but basically that should allow for representation of a country like India with about a fifth of the world's population. Latin America doesn't have a single permanent seat. They should get one. Africa with 54 countries doesn't have one. Japan, which is the second contributor to the organization, doesn't have a permanent seat. I think we should reform the council, make it more representative and more democratic. And if we did that, it will gain in legitimacy. The UN does have a future in the sense that it's the only one we've got. If you were to try to establish the UN today, I'm afraid we may go through some of the discussions we've gone through on environment and may not go very far. But to be really effective, they have to go through reforms, and I think it will come hopefully sooner.
Almost out of time. Maybe one more question at the table? Yeah? Short question and short answer.
Can I? All right.
Maybe it's a simple question, but HOPE XXL wants that everybody on the world is able to give his own life and aid. Do you think that is realistic? Do you think that everybody in the world is able to give his own life and aid?
Able to give one?
To create your life.
Do you think that everybody in the world could be able to give his own life and aid in the future?
Create your life.
Realistic?
On a scale from 1 to 10, with an 8, you mean?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Create your life. He meant, you mean to create your life with at least an 8.
Okay, let me take both at the same time.
I had a question as more like a follow-up on what you just said regarding UN Security Council representation. I was wondering on what basis and on what requirement would you do that in terms of population, contributions to the budget, or?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I think your question about if everybody has a right to, you used a term which I couldn't quite get.
He meant to create your life on a scale
from
1 to...
Yeah,
create a life.
Absolutely. I think everyone, we all have the right to live our lives to the fullest. We have the right to live, as you put it, a greater life. Some may achieve it, others may not. I don't think we can pretend that everybody would achieve that level of what, because it starts with self. You have to have a certain self-awareness, self-insight, to know yourself, to know what you're comfortable, what you really need, and what you can do. And some people are better at knowing themselves, looking inside, listening to their own inner drama, knowing what they are comfortable with, and when they are there where they want to be. There are others who will never be satisfied because they are always looking for more and more and more, and you can't really help those. And there are those who probably are not fully aware to know that they even have a potential to move further. So most people can, but I wouldn't pretend that everybody can. On the question of your reform issue, I think normally what would happen is that a proposal would be put on the table, and the member states will debate it and vote on it. The General Assembly would vote on it first, and then the Security Council will act. Sometimes people say, why don't you remove the vetoes of the permanent power? It's extremely difficult. I would tell you, after the war, they had power, and they used it well to protect themselves. To withdraw the veto, you need the approval. And I don't see the permanent five giving you the approval to withdraw their vetoes. You know, for some, their stature in the world is marked by that P5. So what will have to go is a proposal either from member states or the Secretary General, but the member states have to vote and approve it. How much increase? Do you go from 15 to 20, 15 to 25? And how many permanent seats and ordinary seats? And then it will be decided that way. And then the permanent five would have to agree. The US, for example, would say it might have to go to Congress to get it to ratify, get the ratification. So the process can be quite long. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, our time is almost up, and that means that now the European students can start their work. And after all the discussions we had here and everything they heard today, they will discuss the Lemurs list extensively, and we're going to see what the European Lemurs list looks like on Saturday evening. And of course, I would like to thank Mr. Annan for being here today. And of course, we've got a present for you, because you see the book Speeches That Changed the World, and maybe you can give it to Mr. Annan, because it's a very special copy of this book, because it is signed by all the participants of the European Conference, and we hope that sometime in the future they will give a speech that has the same impact as the ones in this book. And maybe in the future, this copy of this book will be very valuable, because there's only one of it. Mr. Annan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you very much for being with us today. And afterwards, you can buy the book Interventions, A Life in War and Peace, at the bookstore and the theater. And we are almost at the end of the program.
Bye-bye.
But I want to ask all the young people of HOPE XXL to come to the stage, because, of course, Mr. Annan was our most important guest, but we cannot forget the ones Mr. Annan was addressing. Come to the stage while we dream a little bit.
I need it. He didn't seem to say that. Check with him. Thank you.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today.
Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace.
You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Ladies and gentlemen, give them one last warm applause, the students of HOPE XXL.
Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can.
You can thank
A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Thank you very much, and don't forget to create your life. Welcome home, thank you very much, and goodbye.